Sergeant Lucas Bryn had never felt humiliation like this. The scorching Fort Carson sun beat down relentlessly, and yet the heat wasn't what made his skin crawl. It was the rifle in his hands, its polished barrel gleaming under the harsh fluorescent glare of the open-air range, that seemed to mock him. Every round he fired veered wildly, missing the steel target downrange by inches, feet, sometimes completely vanishing into the arid dust. His hands trembled slightly, though he told himself it was only the sun. His heartbeat pounded like a war drum inside his chest. Behind him, a group of younger soldiers whispered. Their laughter was soft, almost imperceptible at first, but Lucas could hear it anyway. Each missed shot was a silent indictment, a once-decorated marksman faltering in public, a man who had been counted on in life-or-death scenarios now reduced to a punchline. His spotter, Corporal Ramos, avoided eye contact, pretending to adjust his gear while secretly scanning Lucas' every twitch. "Sergeant, maybe take a breather," Ramos said cautiously, his voice tight. Lucas shook his head, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "No time, gotta shake it off, let's go again." He chambered another round and peered through the scope, the familiar crosshair supposed to be his confidant, his silent partner. Yet today, it betrayed him. He exhaled slowly, aligning the shot with all the muscle memory, discipline, and experience that had carried him through every previous qualification, every firefight. He fired. Another miss. Dirt kicked up where the bullet landed, the jagged edges of the crater mocking him. He shook his head. Sweat dripped into his eyes, stinging like fire. Then she walked by. It was as if the air shifted when she appeared. Callie Rowan, though he didn't know her name yet, moved with a grace that seemed at odds with the dusty camouflage of her uniform. Sleeves rolled to the elbows, boots caked in mud from some distant drill, braid tucked neatly under her cap. Her hands were full of tools, a precision kit for maintaining firearms, yet her posture spoke of a different kind of discipline, one Lucas couldn't quite place. She paused beside him, eyes narrowing as if reading the rifle, the range, the very trajectory of his missed shots. Lucas noticed a faint tilt of her head, not mocking, not amused, merely observant. "It's not the rifle, Sergeant," she said, voice calm and authoritative. Lucas stiffened. He hadn't expected anyone to speak, certainly not someone who wasn't part of his unit. "How would you know?" he asked, irritation and disbelief mixing into his tone. She nodded toward the weapon as if it were a wounded animal. "Because it's telling you exactly what's wrong. You just need to listen." Her words were precise, surgical. Lucas swallowed hard, a shiver running down his spine. Before he could respond, she continued on her way down the range, leaving him staring after her. His finger hovered on the bolt, his mind raced. Could she be right? Was this rifle really innocent? Or was this some trick, some cruel joke his imagination was playing on him? Around him, the murmurs of other soldiers grew louder. Someone whispered, "Who the hell is she?" Another muttered, "Contractor, probably doesn't know her ass from a barrel." Lucas shook his head. Focus. He couldn't let himself be distracted, but the words echoed in his mind, gnawing at him. "It's not the rifle." He tried again, aligning the scope. Tried breathing the way he had drilled himself to, heart racing, palms sweating, adrenaline surging and ebbing with each tick of the seconds. He fired. Dirt erupted. Miss again. Each failure was a hammer to his pride, a reminder of every firefight where split-second decisions could mean the difference between life and death, and here he was, missing the basics. The lieutenant overseeing the exercise shook his head, muttering under his breath, and Lucas could hear the disappointment in his gaze. Years of accolades, medals, commendations, they meant nothing here, on range 47 in this moment. Ramos leaned close. "Sergeant, maybe step aside, let someone else." "No," Lucas snapped, frustration flashing in his eyes. "I can fix this. I will fix this." And then he heard her again, behind him, closer this time. "You're overcompensating for a drift that isn't there," she said softly. Her voice carried no judgment, only certainty. Lucas spun toward her, anger and disbelief mixing. And who are you? She gave him a faint smile, almost imperceptible. Someone who's seen better marksmen fall prey to fear. Something in her tone stopped him cold. Not mockery, not arrogance, but truth. Fear? He asked bitterly. Yes, fear narrows your aim, she said, and it tells you everything you need to know if you just listen. Lucas's chest tightened. He stared at her, at the calm authority radiating from her small frame, and felt, for the first time that day, a flicker of doubt not in the rifle but in himself. Before he could respond, the base alarm screamed across range 47, harsh, urgent, the kind of sound that turns a quiet morning into chaos in seconds. Soldiers sprinted in every direction. The metallic clatter of equipment being dropped, shouted orders, and the electric hum of tension filled the air. Lucas's mind raced. He wasn't the only one being tested today, it seemed. Something more than missed targets was happening, and it was escalating fast. Callie's calm gaze met his for a brief moment. There was a spark there, almost a challenge. Then she walked away again, disappearing into the chaos of the armory like a shadow with purpose. Lucas took a deep breath, his hands trembling less now but his mind racing faster than ever. The murmurs around him grew louder. Soldiers muttered about the alarm, about the malfunctioning drones, about the impossible scenarios that seemed to be unfolding simultaneously. And Lucas realized, in a way that made his chest tighten, that his embarrassment was the least of his worries. He was about to be tested not by the rifle, not by the targets, but by something far more unpredictable. And he had no idea that the woman who walked past him like a ghost, the woman who said it wasn't the rifle, would be the one to change everything he thought he knew about skill, fear, and what it meant to truly hit the impossible shot. By the time the dust settled on range 47, Lucas Bryn found himself wandering aimlessly toward the armory. His pride had been shattered in minutes. The humiliation of missing every single target was still raw, a gnawing ache that wouldn't go away. He wasn't used to failure, not like this, not publicly. And yet there she was. Callie Rowan. She moved through the armory with a quiet authority that demanded attention without demanding it. Her hands, steady and precise, worked on rifles as if she were performing surgery rather than maintenance. Each movement, a twist of a screw, the adjustment of a sight, the careful alignment of the barrel spoke of experience, of countless hours spent hunting skill to perfection. Lucas couldn't help but watch, though he told himself it was only to learn. The other soldiers in the armory gave her a wide berth. They whispered to each other, eyes darting nervously, half in awe, half in fear. Everyone seemed to instinctively understand that Callie wasn't just another contractor. There was something different about her, something they couldn't place. Lucas finally approached, stepping hesitantly over a stray toolbox. "Tell me what you meant earlier," he demanded. His voice was sharper than he intended. The adrenaline of embarrassment still coursed through his veins. Callie didn't look up immediately. Her eyes stayed locked on the rifle she was disassembling, each part moving under her fingers like clockwork. "You're overcompensating for a drift that isn't there," she repeated, calm, almost soothing. Lucas shook his head. "I've been shooting for 15 years. I know my rifle. I know my aim. This isn't normal." Callie finally lifted her gaze. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, met his. "Normal is subjective. You're reacting to pressure you don't even realize you're under. Your hands are steady. Your rifle is precise. Your mind is." Lucas stared. There was no arrogance in her tone, only clarity. But what unsettled him most was the depth of certainty, as if she could see through him, through his nerves, through every thought and fear he had tried to hide. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper now. "I fix what others can't," she said simply. No hint of pride, no explanation. She glanced at him briefly, then returned to her work. Lucas bristled. "That's not an answer. I need to know why you can see things in a rifle that the rest of us can't." Callie paused, laying a small screwdriver beside the rifle. Her movements were deliberate, controlled. She stood and walked toward him, closing the distance between them. He could feel the weight of her presence, a quiet intensity that made him instinctively straighten his back. "I know that look," she said softly, almost like a confession. "The fear you're trying to hide. The fear that if you fail, it won't just be a missed shot, it'll define you. It'll consume you." Lucas felt a lump in his throat. Nobody, not in the military, not even his closest friends, had ever said anything remotely like that to him. He wanted to argue, to deflect, to remind her that he was a decorated marksman, a soldier trained for life-and-death situations. But no words came. Callie studied him for a long moment, then sighed, a soft sound that seemed out of place among the clang of tools and the low hum of fluorescent lights. "I've seen good shooters falter. I've seen men break under pressure. And I've seen what happens when pride gets in the way of survival." Lucas swallowed hard. "Then you know exactly how it feels." Callie's lips pressed into a thin line. She glanced down at the rifle in his hands, then back at him. "Once," she admitted quietly. "I missed. Once, and it cost lives. I don't talk about it because it's a wound you carry alone." Lucas's pulse quickened. "Lives, what do you mean?" Her gaze flicked toward the disassembled rifles on the workbench, but her voice didn't waver. "You ever see a sniper hesitate for a split second in combat? That hesitation, it's enough. People die because of hesitation, because of fear, because of pride, because of thinking you're untouchable." The weight of her words pressed down on him like the desert sun. He realized he wasn't just facing embarrassment. He was staring at a living reminder of what could go wrong when confidence falters. And Callie Rowan was the embodiment of that reality. Lucas stepped back. "So, you know what I'm feeling because you've been there." Callie nodded, but her eyes held something darker, deeper. "I've been there more times than I can count. And sometimes, even when you know better, even when you're skilled beyond measure, the fear still sneaks in." Lucas wanted to ask more, to dig into her past, to understand how someone could be so calm, so precise, yet carry this invisible burden. But the sudden blare of the base alarm interrupted him before he could speak. The shrill, piercing wail filled the armory and soldiers scrambled in every direction. Lucas's heart leapt into his throat. Something had gone wrong, badly wrong. The alarms weren't routine, not this time. Callie straightened, calm and composed in a way that seemed almost unnatural. She moved toward the exit with quick, deliberate steps, signaling to Lucas without words. "This isn't a drill," she said over the din. Lucas followed, feeling the weight of both fear and curiosity pressing on him. He glanced around. Soldiers were running, shouting, panic threading through every movement. Yet Callie navigated the chaos like she'd done it 1,000 times before, her movements precise, her gaze unflinching, her mind already calculating, assessing, preparing. He wanted to ask her what she was doing, why she seemed so prepared, why she moved as though the disaster unfolding wasn't a threat but a puzzle to solve. But she didn't give him the chance. She simply handed him a folded note as they ran past the fuel depot, just before a sudden shadow passed over them, a high-speed drone, erratic and out of control, buzzing across the training range. Lucas froze. He barely had time to react as the drone zipped past him, slicing the air like a metallic predator. Soldiers shouted, and the ground seemed to tilt beneath his feet. Callie's calmness held him in place, though, anchoring him like a steady force amid chaos. She bent slightly, pointing toward a control panel that had been partially damaged during the initial alarm. "We need it down now," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "And if it isn't neutralized, the barracks won't be safe." Lucas stared, bewildered. "We can't, there's no time, the colonel." "She'll listen," a voice behind him said. Lucas turned to see the colonel himself, face pale but sharp with urgency, signaling them to move quickly. "Rowan," he barked, "do what you have to do." Callie's eyes met Lucas's briefly, and in that glance, A storm of unspoken understanding passed between them. He realized suddenly that the woman he had dismissed moments ago as a contractor, a background figure, a ghost walking through the armory, was the only person capable of handling this disaster. And in that realization, Lucas felt a flicker of fear unlike anything he had ever experienced in a firefight. Not fear for his own life, but fear of being left behind, fear of failing, fear of witnessing someone else step into a role he had never imagined. Callie turned toward the erratic drone, moving with purpose. Her silhouette against the blazing sky was almost cinematic, calm, resolute, untouchable. Lucas followed her gaze, trying to memorize the precise way she held herself, the way her hands adjusted the rifle with almost inhuman precision. He felt his pride, his fear, and his curiosity intertwining into a single, sharp point of anticipation. Whoever this woman was, Lucas realized, whoever Callie Rowan was, he had just witnessed the start of something extraordinary. And as the drone zipped closer, the chaos of Range 47 erupting around them, Lucas knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The wind whipped across Range 47, carrying with it the acrid scent of scorched earth and dust kicked up by frantic soldiers. The base's usual rhythm of drills and discipline had shattered into chaos. And at the center of it all, hovering in a reckless, unpredictable arc, was the drone, a high-speed reconnaissance model that had clearly malfunctioned, now slicing through the air like a metallic predator. Colonel Andrews barked orders into his radio, voice sharp, almost desperate. "Evacuate the tents, get cover. Bryn, take your position on the south ridge." Lucas froze, heart pounding like a drum. He shouldered the rifle, a lump forming in his throat. 15 years of precision shooting had never prepared him for this, a rogue drone, erratic in its flight path, aimed at hitting something no one had counted on it striking. He adjusted his stance, tried to calm his racing heartbeat. And then she appeared. Callie Rowan, moving through the chaos like she was part of it, yet untouched by it. Dust swirled around her boots, hair escaping from her braid, eyes sharp and calculating. She reached Lucas in a few long strides, her gaze sweeping the range. "Borrow your rifle, Sergeant," she said simply. Lucas blinked. "You can't, you're not cleared to." But she had already lifted the weapon from his trembling hands. Her fingers closed around the stock as if she had known it intimately all her life. The soldiers near them instinctively gave her space, whispers and awe following in her wake. "Step back," she said, calm, precise, no hesitation. Lucas hesitated, then did as she asked, confusion and curiosity warring with a strange, growing admiration. He watched as she settled into position. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, the kind of discipline that only comes from repeated exposure to life-or-death situations. The drone zipped erratically, dipping dangerously low, then shooting up again, a silver streak against the blazing sky. Soldiers shouted, diving for cover as it swooped near the fuel depots. The colonel's face was pale, jaw tight, eyes wide with disbelief. Callie exhaled slowly. Her fingers tightened on the trigger. Lucas could see her knuckles blanch against the stock, and yet there was no tremor in her stance, no falter in her focus. She was the eye of a hurricane, calm, unmoving, untouchable. Lucas watched, mesmerized, as she exhaled once more, aligning the crosshairs. The drone veered sharply left. She adjusted, anticipation threaded in every subtle movement of her body. The drone dipped again, heading straight toward the training tents where soldiers had scrambled for safety. Panic flashed through Lucas, but she remained calm, every fiber of her being tuned to the target. Time slowed. Every second stretched into eternity. Lucas felt like he could hear the drone's metallic hum as if it carried a heartbeat. Sweat ran down his back. Around them, the world had narrowed to the rifle, the target, and Callie. She squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed across the range like thunder. The drone shuddered violently, tilting sharply. Sparks flew as its rotors caught on debris from its own malfunctioning mechanisms. Soldiers cheered, relief washing over the chaos, but Lucas knew better. The drone wasn't down yet. Callie exhaled and chambered another round, eyes locked, heart steady, mind precise. The drone spun wildly, moving unpredictably like a living creature, threatening everything in its path. Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He had seen expert marksmen in combat zones, men who had made life-or-death shots with uncanny precision. But Callie Rowan, she moved differently. Each adjustment was fluid, instinctive, calculated. She wasn't just aiming at the drone, she was predicting it, anticipating its next impossible move. The colonel barked again, voice cracking under stress. "If you don't take it down now, it's going into the barracks." Callie didn't flinch. The wind buffeted her, whipping dust into her eyes. Her hands were steady, her breathing measured. And in that moment, Lucas realized something astonishing. She was calm not because she was fearless, but because she had survived moments that would have broken anyone else. She fired again. The drone spiraled violently, smoke trailing, sparks flying from exposed wiring. For a heartbeat, it seemed to hover midair, as if defying gravity itself. Soldiers ducked instinctively, shielding themselves from the imminent crash. Then, in a sudden, heart-stopping moment, the drone plummeted toward the open field, heading for a line of parked vehicles. Lucas felt his stomach knot. This was too close, too fast. He wanted to run, to leap, to do something, anything, but Callie's calm composure anchored him in place. She exhaled, recalibrated her aim, and fired once more. This time, the shot hit perfectly. The drone exploded mid-air, showering debris harmlessly across the field. Sparks rained down like fireworks, the acrid smell of burning electronics stinging Lucas's nostrils. Silence fell over the range, broken only by the crackling of small fires igniting in the dust. Lucas stared, wide-eyed, barely able to comprehend what had just happened. The soldiers around them erupted into cheers, some raising fists, others clapping with trembling hands. But Lucas didn't move. He was rooted to the spot, stunned, speechless. The colonel ran toward her, face pale, eyes wide with disbelief and relief. "Ma'am, how did you?" His words faltered. Callie lowered the rifle, breathing steady now, eyes scanning the aftermath as though nothing had happened. She gave the colonel a small nod. "It's handled," she said, voice calm, almost detached. Lucas finally stepped forward, all mingled with confusion. "Who are you?" he demanded. His voice shook, disbelief evident. How can someone do that? How are you even here?" The colonel stepped between them, his gaze still locked on Callie. "You need to know, Bryn, she's the one we call when the best of the best fail, or when the situation is too impossible for anyone else to handle." Lucas blinked. "Impossible." Callie's eyes met his, calm, unflinching, piercing. "You just witnessed impossible, and I made it real." Lucas felt the weight of the truth settle over him. This was no contractor. This was no civilian observer. Callie Rowan had walked through Range 47 like a ghost, and in a matter of seconds had rewritten everything Lucas thought he knew about skill, precision, and what it meant to truly take a shot when it mattered most. Around them the soldiers whispered, pointing, awed and fearful. "Who is she? I've heard rumors. Is she?" Callie ignored them. She adjusted the rifle one final time, checked the chamber, and walked back toward the armory as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. Lucas wanted to follow, to demand answers, to ask every question racing through his mind. But the colonel stopped him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Not yet," the colonel said quietly. "Some truths you aren't ready for, but remember this. She just saved lives you can't even begin to count, and one day you might need her again." Lucas exhaled shakily, staring at the retreating figure of Callie Rowan. For the first time all day, he felt something besides humiliation and fear. Awe, disbelief, and the faint spark of curiosity that could easily turn into obsession. He didn't know what her past was. He didn't know why she left the military, why she carried herself with the calm authority of someone who had stared death in the face more times than most could imagine. But he knew this. The woman who had just borrowed his rifle and made the impossible shot was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. And he also knew, with a certainty that gnawed at the edges of his disbelief, that this was only the beginning. Because if Callie Rowan had a mission tonight, it wasn't over. And if Lucas Bryn wanted to understand the woman who had just saved his unit from disaster, he was going to have to follow her into the chaos she navigated with effortless precision. And in that moment, Lucas realized something that made his stomach tighten and his pulse race faster than it had all day. Callie Rowan wasn't just a shooter, she was a force of nature. And the world wasn't ready for her. The air around Range 47 was still thick with dust, the acrid scent of scorched electronics lingering from the exploded drone. Soldiers and contractors alike moved cautiously, some still gaping at the smoldering wreckage, others whispering rumors about the woman who had just taken a shot no one else could make. Lucas Bryn stood rooted in place, his mind racing, heart still hammering. Callie Rowan had disappeared into the armory with a calm, almost eerie grace, leaving a wake of stunned soldiers in her path. He swallowed hard, trying to process everything he had just witnessed. The drone, the impossible shot, the uncanny precision. Nothing he had seen in 15 years of service prepared him for this. Then the colonel approached. "Sergeant Bryn," Colonel Andrews said, his voice taut with tension, "come with me, now." Lucas hesitated, glancing back toward the armory doors where Callie had vanished. The colonel's sharp, commanding gaze left him no choice. He followed, weaving through the still scattered soldiers, each step echoing in the sudden, uneasy silence that had fallen over the base. Inside the armory, the chaos of earlier had subsided, replaced by an almost reverent quiet. Callie stood near a bench, rifle back in her hands, inspecting it as if nothing had happened. Her braid hung loose from her cap now, dust clinging to her fatigues. Lucas took a hesitant step closer. Colonel Andrews stopped beside her, eyes narrowing. "Callie," he said, the tone both respectful and incredulous, "we didn't know you were on base." Callie offered a slight nod, calm and composed. "Passing through," she said simply, brushing a streak of dust from her arm. Lucas felt his pulse spike. Passing through. With a shot like that, he wanted to ask how someone could move through life so casually while leaving chaos and astonishment in her wake, but he knew better than to interrupt. The colonel's face, pale from stress, betrayed a mixture of awe and disbelief. "You're military," he said cautiously, almost as if confirming a rumor. Callie's eyes flickered briefly, a shadow of old pain crossing her expression. "Was," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I left." Lucas's brow furrowed. "You left after what you just did, after everything." Callie's gaze met his, calm yet unreadable. "I made a call once that cost good people their lives," she said softly. "After that, commendations feel heavier than guilt." Lucas's stomach tightened. "You're saying you quit because of one mission?" "No," she corrected, eyes narrowing slightly. "I broke." He took a step back, trying to reconcile the woman who had just executed the impossible shot with the fragile vulnerability in her voice. "So, you're a ghost now. You just drift from place to place." Callie didn't answer. Instead, her eyes shifted toward the rifle she had borrowed from him, fingers brushing lightly over the stock. "I've been called many things," she murmured, voice low. "But yes, people call me a ghost. I don't stick around, I don't leave traces, I don't show up twice." Lucas's mind reeled. A ghost. The stories, the rumors, the whispers in the military corridors. He had heard some soldiers talking about a mysterious sniper with unmatched skill, a figure who appeared, completed impossible missions, and vanished without a trace. He had dismissed it as legend, exaggeration, the kind of myth soldiers tell to scare rookies. But standing in front of him now, dust clinging to her sleeves and determination in her eyes, was the living embodiment of that legend. "You're real," he breathed. Callie's lips curved in a faint, ironic smile. "Unfortunately, yes." The colonel stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper that only Lucas could hear. Bryn, she's the one they send when situations are too dangerous, too impossible for even our best snipers. When all protocols fail, she's called in. Lucas's jaw went slack. You're saying she's elite, like top-tier JSOC level. The colonel nodded grimly. Not just elite, she's beyond that, there's no one else. And yet she left, voluntarily. Callie turned slightly, eyes catching Lucas's. For a fleeting second he saw something raw, human, the pain of someone carrying more than most could imagine. I don't make it easy for anyone, she admitted. Because I know the weight of mistakes, and some mistakes you carry forever. Lucas swallowed hard. He had seen men break under pressure before, had seen soldiers haunted by choices and actions. But there was a difference here. Callie wasn't just carrying a burden, she had mastered it, channeled it, used it to survive. And in the process, she had just saved dozens of lives on a base that moments ago had teetered on disaster. Then why are you here? Lucas asked, voice trembling. Why intervene today? Callie's eyes flicked toward the still smoldering drone wreckage. Because running doesn't solve anything, she said softly. And sometimes, even ghosts need to step back into the light. Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. The words were simple, but they carried an unspoken weight, a warning, a promise, a confession all at once. Step outside, Bryn, the colonel said suddenly. Lucas followed, curious and apprehensive. Callie remained inside, adjusting the rifle on the bench with meticulous care, as though she were preparing for something else entirely. Outside, the colonel lowered his voice. You just saw her skill. What you didn't see is the life she left behind to carry that skill, and the cost. Lucas shook his head, incredulous. Cost? I just saw her take down a rogue drone like it was nothing. She's invincible. The colonel's eyes were hard, filled with the kind of knowledge that made Lucas's stomach tighten. No one is invincible. Not her. Not you. Not anyone. But she's been trained, conditioned, hardened in ways that defy explanation. And now she's back, whether you're ready or not. Lucas turned back toward the armory. Callie had picked up the rifle again, her movements deliberate, purposeful. Her presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore. Soldiers and contractors alike whispered in awe and fear, giving her space as though instinctively understanding that she belonged to a different world, a world where life and death were not abstract concepts, but immediate, pressing realities. Lucas felt a strange mixture of awe, fear, and curiosity. He had spent years in combat, faced impossible situations, and yet he felt dwarfed, almost insignificant, standing near her. And yet, there was something else, an inexplicable pull, the kind that makes you want to follow, to understand, to witness. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, Callie's voice carried from inside the armory. Bryn, remember this. Fear narrows your aim. You have to master it or it will master you. The words hit him harder than any bullet ever could. Fear, control, precision, judgment. The very essence of a soldier's life condensed into a sentence spoken by a ghost he had never imagined existing. And before he could respond, the colonel's radio crackled. Orders were coming in, real intelligence, high priority, a situation escalating beyond training exercises, beyond simulations, beyond what Lucas had ever faced. Callie straightened, rifle in hand, eyes narrowing at the horizon. Her calm, authoritative presence returned, focused and unyielding. Lucas realized with a mix of dread and anticipation that she was about to be deployed on something far bigger, far more dangerous than anyone here could even imagine. And in that realization, a chilling truth dawned on him. Callie Rowan wasn't here for observation. She was here for action. And whatever came next, Lucas Bryn would have to decide if he would follow or be left behind in the wake of a ghost. By the time dusk began to paint the Colorado sky in streaks of orange and gray, the base had settled into a tense, uneasy calm. The wreckage of the training drone had been cleared, but the nervous energy in the air refused to dissipate. Soldiers whispered in hushed tones, some casting glances toward the armory where Callie Rowan had vanished moments ago. The name Ghost floated in the air like a secret curse, unspoken yet understood. Lucas Bryn paced near the edge of the drill field, rifle slung over his shoulder, mind racing. He had spent hours trying to reconcile the impossible shots, the drone's near-catastrophic flight, and Callie's uncanny skill. And now, as he watched soldiers hustle in preparation for some new assignment, he felt a creeping sense of dread. Something bigger was coming, something beyond training, beyond any scenario he had prepared for. It came over the comms like a thunderclap. "Attention all units. Foreign reconnaissance drone detected entering restricted airspace. Interception required immediately. Countermeasures offline. Repeat, countermeasures offline. All available snipers report to assigned coordinates. Situation classified top priority. End transmission." Lucas's stomach tightened. This wasn't a malfunction anymore. This was a live, foreign-made, low-altitude drone, a threat with lethal potential, heading straight toward the base. He turned toward the colonel, expecting orders. But instead, he saw Callie standing calmly at the edge of the staging area, rifle in hand, eyes narrowed on the distant horizon. Soldiers instinctively moved aside, giving her a wide berth, whispers of awe following in her wake. Colonel Andrews's face was taut with urgency. "Bryn," he barked, voice low but firm, "you're the only trained sniper here who can attempt a long-range intercept. Suit up, you're on the North Ridge. Go." Lucas's mind raced. North Ridge was exposed, high risk. He could do it. He had done worse in combat zones. And yet he glanced at Callie, calm, composed, focused. She wasn't just preparing for this mission, she owned it. "Wait," he called out, voice cracking. "She can't." The colonel cut him off. "We don't have another sniper. You want civilians to handle this. You know she can do it, just don't get in her way." Lucas swallowed hard, reluctantly realizing the truth. Callie wasn't here for observation. She wasn't here for guidance. She was here to act. Callie caught his gaze briefly, a faint nod, almost imperceptible. Then she turned, moving toward the trucks that would take her and the spotter to the interception point. Her gait was smooth, controlled, predatory even. Lucas's pulse hammered in his chest. He wanted to ask her to wait, to let him handle it. But a sudden siren echoed across the base, warning that the drone was closer than they thought. The North Ridge was a treacherous climb. Rocky outcrops, steep inclines, and loose dirt made each step a challenge. Lucas had been there before in training exercises, but this was different. Real stakes, lives on the line. And beside him, Callie navigated with fluid, precise movements, her rifle always at the ready. She moved like she had done this 1,000 times before, not out of arrogance, but experience, calculated risk, and raw instinct honed over years he could barely imagine. "Corporal," Callie said quietly to the spotter accompanying her, "I need a clean line of sight. Adjust wind calculations. Estimate speed at 22 meters per second. Wait for my signal. Don't fire until I say." Lucas could barely process it. She was giving orders to a corporal who was half her age, yet he obeyed without question. Authority radiated from her effortlessly, the kind that doesn't require rank, medals, or paperwork. They reached a vantage point on the ridge, overlooking the valley where the drone buzzed like a mechanical hornet. The spotter set up a laser rangefinder, calibrating for distance, wind, and gravity. Callie's eyes narrowed through her scope, analyzing trajectory, angle, and speed with near-inhuman precision. Lucas knelt beside her, heart hammering. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice low. "You left the military, you quit. Why risk yourself again?" Callie's voice was quiet but firm. "Because hesitation kills, fear kills, and sometimes even a ghost has to step back into the fight." A sudden flash caught his eye. The drone darted left, then right, cutting across the valley with impossible agility. Soldiers below scrambled, weapons useless against its speed. The countermeasure systems were still offline, their last hope now resting on this single, improbable intercept. Callie adjusted her scope, hands steady. Lucas watched, awestruck, as she calculated wind, rotation, and drift instinctively, her body moving in perfect harmony with the mechanics of the rifle. 3 seconds to shot, she muttered under her breath. No room for error. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. He had fired under pressure before. He had taken life-or-death shots, but watching her, seeing the absolute calm, precision, and confidence, he realized he had never truly witnessed skill like this. The drone dipped suddenly, heading straight toward the barracks. Alarm klaxons blared across the base. Lucas could hear shouting, screams, and the low hum of soldiers scrambling for cover. Callie exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked across the valley like a cannon blast. The drone shuddered violently but did not fall. Sparks erupted from its rotors, smoke trailing, its path still threatening. She recalibrated instantly. Estimate 3 meters per second lateral drift. Adjust elevation by 2 clicks. Wait. The drone spun, erratic and unpredictable, and Lucas felt a wave of panic rise. He wanted to leap to help, to do something, but she was in total control. He realized that trying to intervene would only ruin everything. Then the impossible happened. Callie fired again. The shot clipped the drone perfectly, spinning it into the air, sparks and smoke trailing. But instead of a clean neutralization, it spun, heading toward the north ridge toward them. Lucas froze. Callie didn't flinch. She adjusted again, firing a 3rd round. The drone exploded midair in a dazzling shower of sparks, the fragments raining harmlessly across the field below. Silence fell. Soldiers stared, mouths agape. Some dropped to their knees, eyes wide. The colonel staggered toward her, disbelief written across every line of his face. She's impossible," someone whispered. Lucas knelt beside her, trembling, watching as she lowered the rifle, hands steady, calm, and unshaken. The chaos around them faded, replaced by the quiet awe of survival, skill, and something that felt almost supernatural. Callie turned her gaze toward the horizon, eyes sharp, calculating, already scanning for the next threat. Lucas's mind reeled. He had just witnessed a mission most snipers would fail in decades of experience, and yet she handled it like a routine exercise. He realized with a shiver, she hadn't come back to the military for recognition, medals, or glory. She had come back because she had to, because there were things only she could handle, and if she didn't, people would die. Lucas's pulse raced. He felt awe, fear, and an odd sense of insignificance all at once. The ghost, the woman they whispered about in legends, had just saved lives again. And he also knew, deep in his gut, that this was far from over. The mission was just beginning, and the stakes were higher than anything he had faced. Callie glanced at him briefly, a faint nod, almost as if acknowledging his presence, then turned back toward the ridge's edge. Her eyes narrowed, scanning for threats, ready for the next impossible shot. Lucas swallowed hard, heart hammering. He realized something chilling. This mission wasn't hers alone, and the only way to survive the coming night was to follow her lead. And follow her he would, whether he was ready or not. Night fell over Fort Carson like a blanket of ink, swallowing Range 47 and the surrounding training fields in near-total darkness. The base was tense, every soldier on high alert after the drone incident. Emergency lights flickered across the perimeter, casting long, uneasy shadows that stretched like fingers across the cracked asphalt. Lucas, Bryn, and Callie Rowan crouched on the ridge, overlooking the valley below. The adrenaline from the previous drone engagement had barely ebbed, and now the reality of the next mission was setting in. Intelligence had just confirmed it. The rogue drone had been a test, a precursor. Someone, somewhere, was probing the base's defenses, and Callie, the ghost, was tasked with neutralizing the source before it escalated. Lucas adjusted the scope on his rifle, trying to steady his shaking hands. He had faced enemy combatants before, had taken life-and-death shots, but the weight of following Callie into unknown territory made his stomach churn. "You okay?" Callie's voice cut through the cold night air, calm but precise. Lucas swallowed. "As okay as anyone facing whatever we're walking into." Callie's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Good. You'll need your wits sharp. Fear narrows your aim." Lucas flinched, remembering her earlier words. The ghost had already taught him a lesson he hadn't realized he needed, but tonight the stakes were higher. Below them, the valley stretched out, a jagged expanse of dirt mounds, training tents and darkened vehicles. Movement flickered in the shadows, faint, deliberate. Lucas adjusted his night vision goggles, spotting two figures moving cautiously near a supply depot. "Targets," Callie muttered. Her tone was flat, clinical, like announcing the weather. "Likely recon team, armed, no countermeasure, no witnesses." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. The precision in her voice, the calm detachment, it was unnerving. He had seen seasoned snipers in combat, but nothing like this. Callie didn't just see the mission, she became the mission. "They're testing perimeter defenses," Lucas said softly. "We stop them, the base is safe. We fail." "You don't fail," Callie interrupted, her eyes narrowing. "I won't let you focus." Lucas exhaled slowly, heart hammering. He knew better than to argue. Callie Rowan was in charge now, and if anyone could neutralize the threat, it was her. They observed the movement below. The enemy operatives, two figures clad in black, carrying compact weapons, moved with disciplined stealth, scanning the area as they approached a row of supply trucks. The faint hum of electronics suggested they were communicating with an external operator, likely coordinating another drone or device. Callie adjusted her rifle, whispering calculations under her breath. Wind speed, trajectory, distance, lateral drift. She calculated them all instinctively, her hands moving fluidly across the scope's adjustments. Lucas felt awe mixed with fear. He had trained for scenarios like this, but watching her work was something else entirely. She didn't just anticipate movement, she predicted it, countered it before it even happened. 3 seconds, she murmured, no room for error. Lucas felt a surge of panic. He wanted to move, to help, to do something, but she was completely in control. He realized painfully that any interference would only ruin the mission. The first operative paused near a truck, bending slightly to inspect something. The second moved closer, scanning the surrounding darkness. Lucas's heart pounded. He knew Callie was calculating the exact moment, the precise angle for a clean, lethal intercept. Then, almost imperceptibly, she fired. The shot rang out, silent to the valley below thanks to a suppressor, and the first operative crumpled, unconscious but alive. Lucas blinked, stunned. Callie had neutralized the target with perfect precision, avoiding lethal force while stopping the threat. The second operative spun at the noise, panic in their movements. Lucas instinctively wanted to fire, but Callie's hand on his shoulder froze him. "Wait, anticipate, predict," she whispered. The operative moved erratically now, signaling toward the tree line. Lucas's pulse spiked. They were attempting to escape, possibly to regroup or detonate something dangerous. Callie's eyes narrowed. "Adjust for lateral drift," she muttered. "Wind gust 22 degrees. Target velocity 3 meters per second. Wait for my signal." Lucas felt his stomach knot. He had calculated shots like this before, in simulations, in combat. But never like this, never with stakes so high and precision demanded so absolute. Callie exhaled, finger tightening on the trigger. The operative made one sudden, desperate lunge toward a supply truck. Lucas held his breath. The shot fired. The operative froze, suspended in the spotlight of moonlight, perfectly incapacitated without harm. Sparks from nearby equipment illuminated Callie's calm expression. She adjusted her stance, scanning the tree line for further threats. Lucas felt a wave of disbelief and admiration. He had just witnessed two live intercepts executed flawlessly, in the dark, under pressure, against moving targets. And yet, Callie's eyes betrayed no satisfaction, no pride. She was already calculating the next move. "Bryn," she said quietly, turning toward him, "we're not done." Lucas swallowed hard. "More." "Always more," she said, voice flat. "Recon drones, perimeter breaches, tonight isn't over. Keep your head clear, your aim steady, and remember, hesitation kills." Lucas nodded, suddenly aware of how unprepared he was for the depth of her experience. Every action she took, every calculation, every move, it was instinct honed through missions he could barely imagine. She wasn't just a sniper. She was a force of nature, tempered by loss, by fear, by experience, and by survival. Suddenly, movement caught her eye further down the valley, approaching the tree line. A shadowy figure, larger than the recon operatives, moving with deliberate, predatory intent. Lucas's stomach dropped. Callie's expression hardened. "High value," she murmured. "Likely armed, likely dangerous. One shot, one chance." Lucas's hands shook slightly as he adjusted his scope. He had trained for years for situations like this, yet he felt small, insignificant beside her. She had already neutralized two targets with impossible precision. And now, the real threat was approaching, the one that would define whether the base survived the night. Callie exhaled slowly, and for the first time, Lucas noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the fleeting shadow of fear behind her unwavering calm. She had faced worse. She had survived worse. And yet, this target, the real mission, was testing her like nothing else had. Lucas swallowed hard. He realized with chilling clarity that following her into this operation wasn't just about survival. It was about witnessing something few soldiers ever would. A ghost, a legend, moving through the shadows, executing impossible shots and bending life-or-death outcomes to her will. The shadow approached the tree line and Lucas felt the air tighten. Callie adjusted her rifle, fingers moving fluidly, eyes narrowing. The valley seemed to hold its breath, every sound suspended, every movement weighted with consequence. And then she fired. The night exploded with precision, a shot so clean, so exact, that even the moon seemed to pause. The shadow froze, incapacitated, neutralized without collateral damage. Lucas exhaled shakily, heart racing, mind reeling. He had seen the impossible again, and it left him trembling with awe, fear, and a strange, growing respect. Callie turned toward him, eyes calm, unwavering. "This isn't about me," she said quietly. "It's about the mission, and the mission isn't over. Stay sharp. Watch, learn." Lucas nodded, understanding that he had entered a world beyond ordinary combat. A world where fear, skill, precision, and instinct intertwined. A world where Callie Rowan, the ghost, moved like a force of nature. And the night was only just beginning. The valley was silent now, but the tension hung heavy like a storm cloud ready to break. The air smelled of scorched earth and ozone from the drone's destruction, mingled with the metallic tang of adrenaline and sweat. Lucas Bryn crouched beside Callie Rowan on the ridge, rifle trained on the distant tree line, eyes wide with disbelief. Callie's calm, precise movements never faltered. Her scope tracked the shadowy figure, the high-value target moving with predatory intent among the trees. Lucas's fingers twitched, itching to fire, to intervene. But every instinct told him the same thing. She had this. He was here to follow, observe, survive. "Bryn," she said quietly, voice low but commanding, "calculate the distance, speed, wind, anticipate its next move. One shot, one chance." Lucas's mind raced. He adjusted his scope, calculating trajectory, lateral drift, bullet drop. Years of experience should have made this routine, but watching her, he realized he had never truly prepared for this. The target wasn't moving in a predictable path. It wasn't simply human. Every movement, every twist seemed designed to test him, to push him beyond instinct, beyond calculation. The shadowy figure paused for a moment, silhouette illuminated by the moon's pale light. Lucas could see the faint glint of something metallic, a weapon, perhaps, or an electronic device capable of destruction. His chest tightened. Callie didn't flinch. She exhaled, finger tightening on the trigger, eyes unwavering. "Wait," she whispered almost to herself. "Wait for the right moment. Predict, anticipate, align." Lucas felt sweat bead at his temples. He had never witnessed patience like this in combat. Snipers often fired under pressure, but Callie treated the moment as if the world itself had stopped, as if only she existed and only precision mattered. The shadow moved again, a subtle shift, a step, a glance over its shoulder. Callie adjusted her aim in milliseconds, recalculating trajectory, wind, and elevation. Lucas could see the faint tremor of tension in her jaw, almost imperceptible, yet it told him she was human, vulnerable even amidst perfection. "Now," she breathed. The shot rang out, silent thanks to her suppressor, but its impact was undeniable. The shadow froze mid-stride, incapacitated before it could react. Sparks flew from a device clutched in its hand, an explosive of some kind neutralized with uncanny precision. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. The impossible had happened. Callie didn't celebrate. She simply adjusted her stance, eyes scanning the tree line for any remaining threats. Every motion was fluid, deliberate, surgical. Lucas realized the magnitude of what he had just witnessed. She had taken a shot no one else in the military could have made, neutralizing a live threat without endangering anyone else. He swallowed hard, awe and disbelief warring in his chest. "How?" he began, but the words faltered. Callie's eyes flicked toward him, a faint nod acknowledging his presence. "Control your fear," she said softly. "Let it focus you, not paralyze you." Lucas exhaled shakily, understanding. Fear was an enemy here. Precision demanded calm. Life and death hung in the balance with every heartbeat. The colonel's voice crackled over the comms. "All units report status. Threat neutralized, confirmed." Callie spoke into the radio, calm, precise. "Target neutralized. No casualties. Extraction in 5 minutes. Area secure." The relief was palpable, even through the static of the radio. Soldiers exhaled, some laughing nervously, some shaking with adrenaline. But Lucas remained crouched, eyes fixed on Callie. He realized he had witnessed something extraordinary, someone who defied the limits of human skill, someone who walked the line between legend and reality. As the team moved in to secure the area, Callie descended from the ridge with measured steps. Lucas followed, heart still racing, mind struggling to catch up to the reality of her actions. She moved like a ghost, silent, deliberate, untouchable, yet there was a weight behind her every step, a history of survival and loss etched into her posture. The soldiers on the ground whispered, pointing, staring. Some had heard rumors of the ghost, the elusive sniper who appeared only when missions were impossible, but witnessing her in action in the flesh was something else entirely. Lucas approached her cautiously. "Callie, how do you do that? How do you make the impossible routine?" She glanced at him, eyes sharp, yet there was a fleeting softness. "Years of practice and years of failure," she said quietly. "You learn what works, what doesn't, you calculate every factor, and most importantly, you accept the cost of mistakes. Even ghosts pay that price." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. She wasn't exaggerating. He had seen the precision, the skill, the calm. But behind it all there was a history, a story of survival, of loss, of missions that had shaped her into this legend. A voice interrupted them. Colonel Andrews stepped forward, face taut with tension and relief. "Callie, that was incredible, beyond anything I've ever seen." She nodded faintly, returning the rifle to the case. "It's my job," she said simply, "and the mission isn't over until the area is secured and all threats are neutralized." Lucas watched her, a strange mixture of awe and fear rising in his chest. She had taken the impossible shot, neutralized a lethal threat, and yet she spoke as if it were routine, like this was just another day at the office. The colonel clapped a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Sergeant, you saw it firsthand. That's why we call her Ghost. That's why the military trusts her with missions no one else can handle. And that's why, if you want to survive tonight, you follow her lead." Lucas swallowed hard, nodding. He realized the truth. Callie Rowan wasn't just a sniper. She was a force of nature, a ghost walking among soldiers, bending probability to her will, carrying the weight of impossible missions on her shoulders. The night wasn't over. Another mission, another threat, could arise at any moment. And Lucas Bryn, despite his years of experience, understood that he was now in the presence of someone extraordinary, someone who could make the impossible a reality. As they moved back toward the base for debriefing, Lucas glanced at her, heart pounding. "Callie, will we ever know your real story?" She looked at him, eyes sharp, calculating, yet a shadow of vulnerability flickered across her face. "Some stories aren't for telling," she said softly, "but tonight you witnessed one." And with that, she melted back into the shadows of the base, leaving Lucas with a sense of awe, fear, and anticipation. He had seen the impossible, and he knew, deep in his gut, that the next impossible challenge, whatever it might be, would not wait. Because the ghost never stays in one place for long. And neither does danger. Dawn crept over Fort Carson, spilling pale light across the valley and casting long, jagged shadows over the ridge where Lucas Bryn and Callie Rowan had spent the night. The base was quieter now, the immediate threats neutralized, yet the tension remained thick in the air, heavy and almost tangible. Soldiers moved cautiously, checking equipment, exchanging guarded glances. Somewhere deep in the base, alarms were being silenced and reports filed, but for Lucas, the night's events lingered like a storm that refused to pass. He sat on the ridge, still gripping his rifle, gaze fixed on the distant tree line where he had witnessed the impossible. Callie Rowan had neutralized every threat with a precision and calm that defied belief, and yet she didn't celebrate. She hadn't smiled, hadn't acknowledged the awestruck soldiers watching her in the darkness. She simply moved, silent, efficient, a ghost among men. Lucas exhaled slowly, letting the adrenaline drain from his body. "I don't understand how someone can be like that," he muttered under his breath, mostly to himself. A soft rustle behind him made him spin. Callie had returned, rifle slung over her shoulder, dust and sweat clinging to her fatigues. Her eyes were calm, scanning the horizon, always scanning, always calculating. "You'll understand one day," she said quietly, voice low and almost gentle. "It's not skill, not fully, it's focus. It's control. It's accepting that the world doesn't bend for anyone except through precision and patience." Lucas swallowed hard. "You're a legend, the ghost, but why help us? Why risk yourself?" Callie's gaze drifted briefly to the valley below, eyes narrowing as if seeing something far beyond the physical landscape. "Because some things demand it. Lives hang in the balance and ghosts still have a conscience, even if the world doesn't recognize it." He nodded slowly, understanding yet not fully grasping the depth of what she carried. He had seen soldiers break under stress, fear, or grief, but Callie carried all of it and transformed it into action, into life-saving precision. She wasn't just a sniper. She was a force of nature, molded by experience, loss, and survival, moving through the shadows and striking when no one else could. A sudden crackle of static over the comms drew their attention. Colonel Andrews's voice, calm but urgent, filtered through. "All units report. Status of neutralized threats confirmed." Callie spoke with the same precision she had all night. "Confirmed. Area secure. All threats neutralized. Extraction in 5 minutes. Minimal collateral." Lucas glanced at her, awe mingling with disbelief. "You make it sound easy," he muttered. Callie offered a faint smile, fleeting but real. "Easy isn't part of the equation. Impossible is. And impossible is what I do." For a moment, silence fell between them, broken only by the wind whispering across the ridge and the distant hum of the base returning to routine. Lucas felt an unfamiliar emotion well up. Respect, yes, but also something heavier, more complicated. Fear, awe, and admiration all tangled together. "You ever get tired," he asked quietly, "of the missions, the ghosts, the—" Callie shook her head. "Tired, sometimes, haunted, always, but that's part of the job. You survive by mastering fear, by bending chaos to your will, and if you hesitate, someone dies." Lucas swallowed hard, understanding that her calm wasn't natural. It was trained, honed, sharpened by impossible missions and impossible choices. She had been through hell, and yet she remained unbroken, a ghost walking among the living. The extraction vehicles arrived, armored transports rolling silently onto the ridge. Callie moved toward them with the same quiet authority, and Lucas followed, still trying to digest the night's events. He had seen impossible shots, neutralized threats, and uncanny precision, yet he knew this was only a glimpse into her world. As they loaded into the vehicles, Colonel Andrews approached one last time, face taut with relief and admiration. "Callie, you've done more tonight than most units accomplish in a month. I don't know how to thank you." Callie nodded faintly, voice calm, detached. "No thanks necessary. Lives saved are payment enough. Remember, hesitation kills. Fear narrows your aim, never forget it." Lucas watched as she stepped into the vehicle, silhouette calm and unreadable, a ghost disappearing into the dawn. He felt a strange ache, a mixture of relief, admiration, and the bitter knowledge that this might be the last time he ever saw her. The vehicle doors closed, engines rumbling to life. Callie Rowan, the ghost, had once again stepped in, executed the impossible, and vanished as if she had never been there. The impossible mission had been completed, threats neutralized, and yet the air still carried the weight of her presence, a presence that refused to be forgotten. As the vehicle rolled down the ridge, Lucas felt the adrenaline finally subside, leaving behind clarity, awe, and a strange longing. He had witnessed skill beyond belief, courage beyond measure, and precision that defied reality. And he realized, with a mixture of fear and respect, that the ghost didn't just operate on instinct or training. She lived in a world that few could comprehend, a world where life and death were constant companions, and impossible was just another challenge to conquer. The valley stretched before him, calm now, bathed in the first light of dawn. Yet he knew that calm was temporary. Danger, chaos, impossible situations, they would come again. And when they did, the ghost would return, unseen, unstoppable, untouchable. Lucas Bryn exhaled slowly, letting the reality settle. He had learned more in one night than in a decade of training. He had seen the impossible, and he had survived it. And he knew one unshakable truth. Some people were born to be legends, some people were ghosts, and some people changed the world without ever staying long enough for anyone to thank them. Callie Rowan was all three. And as the vehicle disappeared into the horizon, Lucas felt both humbled and inspired. The ghost had walked among them, executed the impossible, and vanished without trace, leaving only awe, fear, and the undeniable proof that in the world of shadows and impossible missions, some legends never stay. He looked down at his rifle, the weapon that had been passed to her in trust, and smiled faintly. One day, he thought, he might understand the full story, but for now he had seen the impossible. And that was enough.